call this meeting to order. Oh, excellent timing, Jeff. All right. Welcome to the Water Commission meeting on Thursday, March 20th. Can we do a roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Young?
Here.
Commissioner Cooney?
Here.
Vice Chair Keller? Chair Snyder?
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Here.
So all present except for Vice Chair Keller.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda today?
Chair Snyder, there are no changes to the agenda.
All right. Are there any public comments at this time?
Chair Snyder, we have no speakers for public comment.
Thank you. We'll move on to consent items then. Anything in particular, Joshua, before we move? Okay. Any questions or comments on that?
No
Consent
comments.
items?
Motion to approve consent.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Chair Snyder?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Move on to administrative item 6A, Victrace Reservoir Replacement Project.
Good morning, everyone. Chair Snyder, Commissioners, and Councilmember Sneddon. My name is Kelly Bork, Senior Project Engineer, Acting Supervising Engineer at the moment, and I'm excited to provide you an update on the Victrace Reservoir Replacement Project. This is our third update to Water Commission. I've been here in about spring over the last 2 years, so excited to be here today. Similar to past years, I'll be providing an update on all the various components of the project, including design, outreach efforts, environmental, and an update for our communication folks on site. And then I'll be ending with our updated timeline, funding, budget, and some next steps. So we'll be covering sort of a lot of topics today, not in too much depth, so I encourage this to be a conversation and to ask questions as we go, but still happy to answer questions at the end. Before we dive in, this map here shows you where we are talking about. So Victrace Reservoir is in the Mesa area. It is between Cliff Drive and Meigs Road. It's on a unnoticed hilltop in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So we'll be focusing a lot on the location as we go through the presentation. Victrace Reservoir, what is it? It was built in the 1950s. You can see the old imagery here, which I find really neat because it shows just how undeveloped the Mesa was at that time. Again, it is a critical facility, as you all have heard many times. It is, I think today, the largest reservoir, single reservoir we have in our water distribution system. It stores 10 million gallons of finished drinking water from Cater Water Treatment Plant. And from here, it serves about 60,000 people, which is about 70% of Santa Barbara's water customers or ratepayers, primarily the downtown low-lying areas, the Mesa, and the West Side. So zooming in a little bit closer towards the reservoir site and the streets around it, when I go through design, I'm going to be talking about various components of the project, so I just wanted to familiarize you all with the site. So we have a couple things. We have our transmission main, which is the blue dashed line towards the top of this figure. It's a large diameter pipeline that's basically comes directly from Cater Water Treatment Plant. It weaves through Santa Barbara directly to Victrace. And then leaving Victrace, which you can see there, the reservoir, that gray rectangle, it kind of weaves down the hillside to Cliff, where there's a pressure reducing station. We step down the pressure, and from there, it serves, that 60,000 people. We also have a pump station and a valve building on site at the entrance. The entrance is on La Cornea Drive. And then we also partner with IT on site. So we have a lot of really critical public communication facilities on site. So they They serve, police communications, water communications, and fire as well. So they've been a really good partner with us on this project. So speaking again to why we set out to do this project, some goals and objectives to really frame how we're going to design and develop and ultimately construct this project. First and foremost, I know Joshua harps on this a lot, but aging infrastructure. Vic Trace, it really is a poster child for aging infrastructure in our system. It's 75, almost 80 years old now, and these reservoirs were not, they probably hoped to make it this long, but they were never, designed to last more than 75, 100 years. You can see some pictures I put there of some deterioration that's happening on site. So we're seeing increasing repair needs, and just like a car, there's a certain point where the costs of those repairs just exceed doing an ultimate replacement, which is why we're doing this project now. We also understand that there's likely a seismic risk at the site, as there's a lot of updated seismic codes. It's an outdated design. Reservoirs aren't built like this anymore. They're built really in a modern fashion to achieve, hydraulics, water quality, maintenance, even safety, entering and exiting these reservoirs. And then just some other items. We want to continue to maintain and protect water quality. We would like to address some drainage issues on the site. Again, it's 15 acres and it's a hilltop, so we really want to be kind to our neighbors. And also with climate change, we know that there's going to be more intense storms, so we really want to address those issues. And to that point too, for our neighbors, we really want to tighten security on site. It is a secure site, but it could be much better. We've been seeing a lot of regulations come through on how to tighten security around our facilities, and we do a really great job of doing that at the water treatment plant, but we really want to try and carry that over to our reservoirs and some other facilities. And then in summary, hopefully the theme here is this is all to make this site more resilient, not only for the next 100 years, but hopefully the next 150, 200 years. So to get this to a successful project, we put together an all-star team. We have, of course, our owner and funder, City Water Resources, engineering, my team. We're going to be managing the project with them. We've hired these consultants here, so we have Kennedy Jenks designing, Katz and Associates doing our outreach, Rincon Consultants locally doing our environmental, and then the newest member of our team, Patsy, she's going to be our dedicated planner over in community development. And then I have 2 placeholders here for future team members. We'll have our contractor, of course, and then our construction manager. Beyond that core team who meets with me a lot, we have this greater collaborative team. First and foremost, the community. We really see them as a team member on this project. We're going to be as transparent and collaborative with them as we can. Of course, boards and commissions like Water Commission. We also plan to go to Planning Commission, Architectural Review Board, and City Council. And then we've already been engaging a lot of these city departments, community development. We've engaged parks, sustainability and resilience, IT, fire. I think the only one we're missing there might be police and airport. And then many, many folks in public works. Coordination with our streets team, transportation planning, architect, real property. There's really, I think Matt uses this phrase a lot. This is a one city project. So I'm really excited to sort of meet and work with all these people. And so far the conversations have been really great. So let's dive into the design. We brought on Kennedy Jenks summer of last year. So in 9 swift months, we have done a lot, which I will not get into a lot of detail on. But here are some of the highlights. We've completed a seismic evaluation, geotechnical study. We also looked at, many sort of innovative ways to actually design a reservoir, which is the 2 pictures I called out here. You can design a reservoir within a reservoir. You can design them side by side. Do you want them really deep? Do you want them shallow? So we did a lot of hydraulic analysis to see what we could do, different site layouts for where these were going to be located on site. We also preliminarily looked at construction routes, where could we safely enter and exit the site in the neighborhood, more to come there, and did a lot of funding research, and of course, updated our construction cost estimate. So we completed what's called a preliminary design report. In engineering, the PDR is the first step in design. It's what we call a 15% design. Engineers typically use a scale of 0 to 100. So we're about 15% of the way there, which is a great opportunity to stop, engage the public, engage different interested parties to decide, what else could we do? What else could we look at? But what we know today is what basically our design constraints are. We know what we can achieve hydraulically on site. We know kind of what all the underground infrastructure looks like, so we're going to be moving towards other things. So this is a list of what we know today. We confirmed that we do have seismic and slope stability concerns. We're going to keep one viable entrance to the site on La Coronilla. We're going to terrace the site, improve our access roads and drainage on site. You'll see that in the renderings, which I'm going to click through next. We're going to be doing a lot of pipeline work around the neighborhood. It doesn't make sense to come in and disrupt this neighborhood to only do one small replacement. We might as well get in there and really modernize everything in the area. Site security, as I mentioned, and then we'll also be keeping IT on site, which I'll speak to in some later slides. So happy to start clicking through our renderings unless there's any questions to start.
Question. Just curious about soils. Are they conducive to putting something in the ground
Yes.
in terms of them not being expansive?
Yes, so our geotechnical study did borings on site, and they have a long report about how to build not only the reservoirs on site so that they're stable for the next 100 years, but even things like solar and access roads. So we do not anticipate issues there, so long as it's constructed, graded and compacted well.
Has there been a decision on one or two reservoirs?
Yes, so we decided on 2 buried reservoirs. The goal of burying them, that was a big goal for ours first. We weren't sure if that was going to be achievable, but we can hydraulically because it's all gravity-fed system. So you have to make sure everything kind of lines up elevation-wise so that, cater to here to downtown all makes sense. So yes, we'll do 2 buried reservoirs, 2 5-million-gallon reservoirs. So we're maintaining 10 million-gallon capacity. And they're going to be more or less within the existing footprint of the existing reservoir.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the fun stuff. So we're going to click through some renderings of the site. They're more fun to look at than the drawings. Starting with this first one, we started with this first one so that you can sort of envision what might be on the site in the future as we click through. So what we're looking sort of northeast. The ocean's behind us, bird's eye view of the site. The darker blue area is on top of the reservoir. So that's where those 2 tanks will be buried, is underneath there. So the dark blue is showing some space where we're considering solar. That'll be sort of a next step of design now that we know we can bury them. So we'll be working with sustainability and resilience on that effort here soon. The light blue is new flat area for the site, which will be really, will make our water ops team really happy because there's not a lot of space to sort of even work on the reservoir up there and bring in equipment. So that's new terraced area. And then the orange line is our improved access road around the site. That will be, there is a road on site, but it is not in great condition. So this new road will be much safer for our staff to maintain, secure the site, and also for fire personnel to reach sort of those outlying areas. So as I click through here, happy to answer any questions.
It should be in the packet. It's in the packet, yeah.
All right, so here's a view looking towards the ocean. You can see we have some retaining walls there covered in ivy. You can see the flat space, sort of another slope down to that access road, improved drainage. Landscaping is all fire resistant, drought tolerant, meeting all of today's codes. Here's another view looking towards the ocean, but from the entrance. So you can see those two buildings there. One will be our valve and pump station house that's on site, but that'll be pushed closer into the property. And then our IT neighbors. That other building will house our IT facilities. And you can see here too that we will be consolidating but keeping towers on site. You know, we've been told by our IT department or division that this site is critical to making sure public and fire have communications to the Mesa area because it's kind of a shadow over there in a way. So there will be towers on site, but today there's 8, maybe 9. So they're going to kick off an effort to see how they can consolidate those towers, but they will be more or less in the same area going forward. Zoomed in on this entrance area, you can see there's a gate that will limit access to the reservoir and those critical public safety towers. Our intent is that only city staff will be able to go past this gate due to the criticality of those facilities up there. But much better turnaround space in the entrance. And then ending with the street. So this is what you'll see from the entrance from La Coronilla. Spec our iron gate, the building, and then you can see you can't actually see much of the property, just that retaining wall, which we intend to not have be this big white wall and add some landscaping there. So any questions on sort of the design and renderings before I move forward?
So are you, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Removing or replacing pretty much all of the, like, vegetation that's on the slopes?
For the most part, yes. At least between where we have that access road and up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now out there's a lot of ice plant and a lot of rodent activity, so we're going to really clean that up and try and mitigate that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I recall, and I could be wrong, there was an area that you called kind of quasi-park-like or something like that. How's that fit in the renderings here?
So I think if you can, yep, there's my cursor. So here is La Coronilla Park. It's on Dolores Drive, which you can kind of see right through here. The park is really down here in this flat area. The park, you know, I have looked into the history of it. It looks like it's basically the size of a residential lot.
Yeah.
So that's the flat area you see here, and then a steep slope up to our property. We are not anticipating developing that area or landscaping it. The only work that we will need to do there is we do have a pipeline, like a storm drain in case the reservoir overflows pipeline that does go through that park that was original to 1950s. We will likely need to replace it because it's probably old, but otherwise, no, we have no work in
Is
that
it
area.
actually parkland or is it simply park-like land, if you know what I mean?
It's not. We went up there.
But is it maintained
No,
by
I guess what I'm
parks?
thinking, is it owned as a city park property that would
Yeah.
be covered by the charter?
It's zoned officially as a neighborhood park. So yes, it's included on that section 520, that original ordinance that listed all
Yeah.
those parks. It's La Coronilla Park.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's interesting because it's continuous with the property.
Yeah.
Usually they're on their own parcel, but if you pull up a zoning map, it is zoned as
Yeah,
Parks
good,
and Rec.
thank you.
I have a question. Related to the solar panel installation, so it looks like a sizable array that's being contemplated. Is it estimated to more than offset the amount of power that's going to be needed to run the facility?
We're conducting that analysis now. Sustainability and Resilience has those numbers. I believe, yes. You can, maybe Joshua knows, because he's been included on the Water Energy Master Plan.
So the preliminary numbers are looking like about a 1 megawatt array, so it's a pretty substantial array, which will exceed the power needs on site. And I think the conversation has been around how can we utilize this to power our other water resources facilities and or the grid in general. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities with Santa Barbara Clean Energy to try and work out a partnership. I've been teasing them that, this is local electrons, not these imported carbon-free electrons from Mojave. These are local ones, and there's got to be a healthy price tag for, providing that kind of electrons to the grid. But I do think this overall could be a really great way to start generating some local energy. But we're looking into that and trying to figure out, obviously, the energy market has been and continues to change. The new NEM 3.0 makes it really difficult for solar projects to make financial sense. So we're hoping with Santa Barbara Clean Energy, there's a nexus to trying to make this make more sense here. So so more to come on that. That's going to be a big part of the next design effort.
And that's kind of my concern also. I have panels, and I see what is happening with the rate structure and how there's a potential, not a rollback, but an undoing of prior installations having to pay more to maintain the grid. And I'm just wondering if there's a way for us to bypass that in terms of our internal use of electricity.
Yes.
So we're not being penalized.
Yes, we're hoping that we can basically put power on the grid and take it off, for example, at El Estero, Cater, or Desal, and claim that energy there. That's what we're hoping to do. There's programs for that. It is complicated because we do have our own Santa Barbara Clean Energy, which kind of complicates the way SCE kind of is not a big fan of these energy aggregation projects, and so they're basically making it difficult for us to put power on the grid and say we're taking it off somewhere else.
Yeah, 'cause I want you to help pay for the grid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so battery storage is also going to be in this evaluation?
We'll be evaluating that as well.
Good.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So beyond, as I mentioned, beyond just replacing the reservoir and doing work on site, we will likely be doing pipeline replacement work in and around the area, as those pipes were also original to the 1950s. So you can see the blue dashed and solid lines along La Coronilla. That's where we're going to be replacing and relocating that transmission main pipeline. The pink lines show the pipelines that leave the reservoir down to the downtown and Mesa areas. We're going to be relocating and replacing those from where it jogs down to Cliff over to Dolores Drive in the right-of-way.
I do want to point out the main on La Cornelia that you can see there. Again, I think it's really helpful. Ms. Buark showed the initial location when the reservoir was pretty much by itself. You can see how the main travels through backyards. And is it a 24-inch main? It's a very large main. Anyway, just trying to get it out of people's backyards and into the street. So if you do ever have a break, it controls some of the damage associated with that. So part of that is addressing that. And we would, of course, abandon that easement that we have as part of this. So that would be a big effort, though. Trying to squeeze a main of that size into La Cornelia is going to be tricky.
All right, so to wrap up our design updates, we really wanted to stress that there are still a lot of things we need to learn in this next phase of design. Listed some of them here. The biggest one is confirming and reconfirming and confirming again how we're going to serve the community while we do this project. So in years past, we have analyzed and confirmed that we do have enough storage that we can take Victrace offline and still serve our community. But, you know, the system changes, demand changes, you know, there's a lot of variables. So we're going to confirm and do that again and again and again with all sorts of scenarios. Wildfire, you know, has become recently more important. Summer peak demands, drought, low demands, you know, a lot of things under the sun. That'll be a big operational exercise for us. Second, I've spoke to this a little bit in the past. We do have an oil well on site. It was built in the 1910s, 20s. It was abandoned, but it is located under the reservoir. So that is something we need to really wrap our heads around. We're in communication with that regulatory agency for how to do that. And then Water Energy Master Plan, Mr. Hagmark just spoke to that. And then these last two is, now that we know how the site's going to be more or less designed, we're really going to start focusing in on how we're going to sequence this work, hauling routes, traffic routes, you know, things the neighborhood really wants to know is how long and how are you going to be in our front yard. And we put a note on here, a way we can really get a lot of answers early is doing this alternate contracting method called construction manager at risk. It's called CMAR in our world. It's bringing the contractor on now to really flesh out some of these questions. It's like design build, if you've heard of design build. We already have the design, so we've kind of missed that window, but CMAR may offer a great way for us to answer some of these questions before 2028.
So to kind of give a sense of this, the voters recently passed for the city alternative options except low bid, which has opened up this door to try this method. And again, this is done all over the place, especially with large projects. And what's really intriguing to us is the contractor is going to be on board. We're going to be paying them to be on board with us during the design process. As the designers come up with ideas, construction manager is going to be like, well, you could do that, but here's how you could do it even more efficiently. We're going to have this dialogue back and forth. They'll be providing pricing as we go. And at the end, they will provide a price, and it'll be kind of an open book. Here's what our costs are. Here's what our profit is in this project. And we can choose to go with that, or we could choose to take it out to bid. Either way, we'll have kind of more of a partnership along the way, and the hopes are that we'll reach some consensus on the pricing on that. So new to the city, but not new to the construction world. But I think this project, with all of its nuances, kind of lends itself to having a contractor on board. They can hear the community's concerns along the way. And, when we say these are going to be the haul routes and these are the times we're going to be hauling material, the contractor's going to be right there, standing in front of the audience, agreeing to those same terms. So we're really hoping that it leads to a smoother construction project. So anyway, we're exploring that right now. We haven't made a final decision on that, but we do need to decide soon because we want to get them on board before we get too far along on construction, or design, sorry.
I'm sorry, you may have answered that, but how do you select the contractor now?
Yeah, so the process would be similar to how we selected the design team. It's an RFP process, so request for proposals. They would put forth, here's our team that we would have, and here's how we would approach the project and work with you, and they would provide pricing on what it would take to get to construction.
So it is an early RFP process and competitive selection?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know if contractors that we kind of often work with who are local are familiar with the CMAR process? Is it something that like most contractors are able or interested in doing, or is that limiting?
Given the size of this project, there may be some local contractors that try and go after portions of this work. The way we're kind of envisioning it, there are some big corporations that would probably come in. This does fall into the PLA, so this would be a union-type project, given its magnitude. But the way these projects typically work, there's going to be a sub that actually does the tanks. These are going to be likely pre-stressed concrete tanks. It's a very specialized world. There's going to be grading. So I'd imagine that you're going to see lots of different contractors working on this with a kind of construction manager who's managing all those different specialized trades. And so I think those opportunities, there may be, I'm just not aware of any local firms, but I imagine there's going to be a lot of local contractors going after the smaller pieces of work, which they're probably more suited for.
Got it. Mr. Ward?
Good morning, Matt Ward, Water System Manager. Yeah, just a couple comments on that. I'm really excited to be exploring CMAR for this project in particular because from the start we've been emphasizing that this is a massive lift for the community and also for water resources, and especially as Ms. Bork mentioned on the operations side. So this project is very large, but it is one project in a very large project portfolio right now. So as you're aware, we've increased our efforts for main replacement from 1% to 2% to 6 miles annually within the city. That program alone is huge for the city because, as you know, we're developing more and we have an old system. And then we've also got some transmission main work, which we pointed out just a small portion of that work. So on top of that, we have pump station projects as well as emergencies that come up. So on the operations side, we're really gearing up and we're really wanting to put belt and suspenders on this big project so that way we can make sure we can tackle it all. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
And the last comment I'll make, whenever I talk to contractors about CMAR, they're always like, yes, bring us in early. It'll save you headache, it'll save you time, money. They love to be at the table. So it'd be great to have them in early on this project.
I have a further question, if I may. So we may have touched upon this before. I'm curious about the downtime that this water supply is offline, whether that downtime corresponds with a fire season, spring, summer. Well, I guess nowadays it could be year-round. What the planning is for that, where the additional water would come from, say there was a fire and we needed that reservoir to help. So what's the thinking there?
Right. We've been doing a lot of modeling around that. And we do think there's a way to meet all the community's needs, even during, again, no drinking water system is designed for wildfires, but to meet those peak summer demands and being able to operate multiple fire hydrants. We do believe there's a path forward with this. A critical part of that, as you may recall, we are expanding our storage abilities at Cater. So we currently can store 4 million gallons there, and we're adding another 2.5 million gallons of storage. That project is essential to being able to do this project. So we'll be going from 5 to 7.5 million gallon storage. And then we do have some smaller reservoirs in the area of Victrace that we plan to kind of leverage during construction. But yes, this project's going to span at least 2 years at this point, based on our general understanding of it. So we are going to be going through several, whatever the fire seasons are these days, in December. We'll be spanning a few of those, so we do need to be prepared to meet those needs. And so we'll be working very closely with fire on that as well. But that's going to be a big part of this next part. As you may recall, when we did the Sheffield Reservoir, we actually ended up having to build temporary tanks on site. Trying to avoid that here. Those add a tremendous amount of cost to put in above ground steel tanks during construction. So yeah, we're working to try and make sure we can meet all those needs.
Madam Chair, just to follow up on that quickly. I live, as you know, on the west side. Escondido, that's offline. Is that a backup at all, or bring it back, or would it be too costly and complicated to bring that back?
It'd probably be too costly. we are looking at the Mesa Reservoir, which is located in that neighborhood as well. And so we do have some other additional storage options. I think bringing Escondido back would be a much bigger ask. But, you know, if potentially we could put a bladder of some sort inside there, I don't know. Right now, it's not looking like we need additional storage during construction.
Then I just have another question. I take it, you said it's all gravity fed from Cater. So is Cater of a higher elevation? So
Yes.
there's no pump station down at the bottom of La Cornilla, because that's a pretty steep rise
Right.
coming up from the freeway. So
Yep.
it's all gravity fed.
All gravity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Based on the questions, I just wanted to add a few comments. So the impetus of what really kicked all this off was the 2019 Water Distribution Infrastructure Plan. And so we did a lot of system-wide analysis of how we could go about replacing Vic Trace Reservoir. And so that study informed the sequencing of improvements. And like Mr. Hagmark said, that led us to the conclusion that expanding capacity at Cater was key to all of this. We did look at all of our abandoned and current reservoirs. And through that process, we were able to come up with a framework so that we could determine whether or not temporary storage was needed as a part of this project, and it was not. But we do have other reservoirs that can be put back online that are not currently in line because they're not needed for max day demands, which includes fire flows. So we'll be looking at those, but there's going to be a lot of a process that we're going to go through. One, to revisit that hydraulic analysis that we did, but then also work closely with our operations team and our engineering team. And our engineering team is kind of under the same pressure to perform as our operations team. So we're a real critical group to delivering this whole project for the community, but certainly something we'll be talking with fire about on. And then we've also been working to harden our transmission system, so our ability to convey water multiple ways throughout the city. So there's a very large hardening effort citywide in order to be able to deliver this project and all the needs for the community.
I do want to say that there are some things that also play into that. Desal plays an important part of that. It's providing certainly a portion of the water that's feeding the downtown area, so it can take some of the pressure off of Vic Trace at times. And then we also have the Sheffield reservoirs. So there's two 6.5 million gallon buried reservoirs up there, so a total of 13 million gallons of storage there. So, you know, not that we're not using that reservoir, but there is capabilities to have those reservoirs run at higher elevations or capacity to be able to kind of run with Vic Trace offline temporarily. So lots of moving pieces. Like Ms. Bjork was saying, we're going to be studying this quite extensively and probably doing some field testing, shutting things off and seeing how things work.
Moving along to some other components of this project. So for outreach, we're really excited to sort of kick off our public-facing phase of the outreach process. To date, we've completed with Katz & Associates our strategic communications plan, project website, messaging and materials, and we're excited to announce that we have an in-person community engagement workshop scheduled for Thursday, May 1st at 5:30 at Monroe Elementary School in the area. Following that, we'll host a webinar for those that cannot attend on Wednesday, May 7th at 5:30. That webinar will also be recorded and posted online for anyone who can't attend either. At that workshop, the general format is we'll do a brief presentation, you know, to some extent a little similar to the one I just gave you, really letting the neighborhood and the community know what this project's all about, and then open it up to an open house style. We'll have poster boards around the room. We'll have probably 10 to 12 staff and consultants available to answer questions directly from community members, comment cards, emails, the whole goal of that workshop is really to hear now kind of what the community wants to know, needs to know, what their concerns are. So if Water Commission has any feedback either today or later for items that you all think that we might be missing that the community would like to know, please let us know. Here's a list just of some of the topics for poster boards, items we're going to be talking about, a lot of the things we've spoken to today.
I had a question as well. I was just looking at this. It looks like a great list. I don't know if we would have a poster board about this, but I was thinking of potential questions around kind of funding and rate impacts, and are there federal grants for this
Sure.
that might be impacted, and kind of like that whole funding conversation. Is that something you've thought about or might consider including as a potential part of this?
Yep, no, I agree. We'll add that to the list.
Thanks.
Future design workshops, so this really is going to be the first of many community workshops and meetings. I've listed some examples, but we'll come back with, final design. We'll speak to construction, the routes, how we're going to mitigate, noise and air quality, how we're going to sequence the work, around school schedules, and there's another series of meetings around CEQA and the planning application. So many, many more meetings to come. For CEQA, again, we're working with Rincon Consultants on an anticipated environmental impact report for this project, an EIR. How that process generally works, for this one, it's going to be about a 2-year process. We kicked that off this year. We'll be doing this, what they call an initial study, and a formal initial investigation into the environmental impacts of this project. That is circulated for public review. We're hoping this fall. That also comes with a public scoping meeting, similar to, if you've seen other EIR meetings. We'll incorporate all those comment letters and feedback into a draft and final EIR, which will take place probably most of calendar year 2026. And we've added some resource areas that we're going to be looking into in that EIR. Air quality and noise, those are centered around construction, phase mitigations, biology and cultural resources. Those are all the sites, not only the reservoir, but all that pipeline work. That's the focus there. Hazardous materials, that oil well on site. And then lastly, sustainability. So achieving things like what we set out to do in the city's climate action plan. Last, project-related update for IT. So I've mentioned we have a picture here of the IT site, not today, but a year ago. We have a number of private, third-party folks on site. I've listed them here. The county has vacated the site. They no longer need it, so they're no longer there. SoCal Gas, similar. The Radio Club, we've been working with them. They are no longer operating on site, but they have some equipment there that they're keeping there until October, but we'll work with them. They're hoping to relocate their facilities. And then lastly, AT&T, which is the tower you can see sort of front and center in that picture. That tower has been demolished. They are now operating what they call a cellar on wheels. It's like a mobile temporary tower on site. They're looking to relocate to another area in the city by October. But we work with them almost, weekly or monthly for those updates. And then, as I mentioned, we'll keep IT on site. So city communications, they'll remain on site. So they're constantly working with us on the design of this project. The timeline for this project is unchanged since we've provided updates in the past. We plan to do our ribbon cutting, hopefully end construction in 2031. Basically, for the next couple of years, we're really going to focus on CEQA, the planning application, and design. So that'll take us probably through 2026, 2027. From 27 to 31, that will be either bidding the work or working with this contractor to finalize that construction cost estimate. And then doing, shovels on the ground work from 2028 to 2031. And what we like about this graphic is it really illustrates, the orange dots, how many times we are going to continue throughout this process to engage the community and the public and try as much as we can to be transparent with where we're at in the project, what's on the horizon, and if there's going to be any changes to any major milestones. So lastly, funding and budget, to Chair Snyder's point. This is the same table I've presented the last couple of years, but with a third column. As of today, with our 15% conceptual design, the construction cost is estimated to be, on average, $113 million. That is not driven by scope creep. That is inflation during COVID. That is a lot of contingency just based on the market these days. I think, we have like a 30% design contingency, and even on top of that, the brackets at this phase are anywhere, plus minus 20%. So at a project of this scale, that's a lot. So we really, not only with our designers, are going to get updated construction cost estimates at that 30, 60, 90, but maybe if we bring on this contractor, we'll be able to really fine tune not only how we could save money, but sort of the accuracy of some of these cost estimates. And then to speak to funding, we're still going after state revolving fund, low interest loan funding with the state. We're tracking that, and hopefully those funds are still there. And then we're also exploring a bond, which I can speak to, but we're kind of in the phase, now that we know how much this is going to cost, we're continuing to explore those options in a changing climate. Ending, this is my last slide, is just upcoming milestones. So again, Thursday, May 1st, 5:30, community workshop at Monroe Elementary School, webinar following Wednesday, May 7th. And then upcoming items for Water Commission are going to be the award of our final design contract. So getting us to the design finish line there, maybe that award for the contractor to come on board, and then that CEQA scoping meeting.
Of course, we would love all of you to attend the in-person. I think it'd be great if you could be there. We have been talking already with the city attorney's office about it being noticed as a public meeting in the sense that electeds or appointees could attend. Again, your ability to ask questions will be limited there, but I think it's free game to talk to our customers and hear what their concerns are, and I think it will be a really insightful evening. So I'm looking forward to that, and hope you guys can all make that.
I know it's still a little ways out, and this deck is super helpful, but if there's anything for those who can make it as we approach of like talking points or anything to kind of so that we are prepared to talk to community members, that would be really helpful.
Yes, yep, we have those all in the queue, so we'll share those when they're ready.
So does it take 3 commissioners to require the noticing?
Well, it's before we even got to that, there's an interest by a lot of council members to be there already. So yes, but it does take, if there's more than 3, if it was just a water commission issue, then yeah, you would be, well, 3 would be a quorum. Yeah, so you could only have 2 if it was just a water commission. But I think given that there's strong interest from council already, we've gotten commitment from, I think, 4 council members, including Councilmember Sneddon, that want to be there, so.
So you'll notice it as a water commission also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just to cover our bases. Exactly.
With that, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that we haven't already answered.
Thank you, Ms. Borg. Any questions, comments?
I just appreciate the the presentation, and when you're looking at the timeline, just think how old your child will be.
Yes.
Way to drive it home.
You may or may not see him at some public meeting.
I second that though, and I think about some of like the highway construction projects, and I was like, when is it gonna end? And it's nice to have like at least a tentative, like, okay, you can communicate with the public, like, this is how long you can expect it to go on. And realistically, I think it's helpful just, yeah, to set people's expectations. Is there any public comment?
Chair Snyder, we have no speakers for public comment on this item or on the previous consent calendar items, which I didn't mention.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Ms. Borg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us to Water Resources Manager's report.
All right, Chair Snyder, Commissioners, Council Liaison Sneddon. Happy to answer any questions about what's in the packet. But I did want to just add a few highlights that I wanted to talk to you all about. We are in the midst of kicking off a recruitment for the wastewater supervisor, which oversees operations. So I met with the staff yesterday on that. We will be doing an open recruitment. Right now, we are in the midst of a tap reopener. So our treatment and patrol has a reopener in their contract, and working hard with HR to try and address some of those pay inequities, and especially in the areas where we've been really struggling to recruit and retain staff. So really optimistic right now that we can make something happen. We met this week with the SLIP business case. So as you may recall, we got that ball rolling. The consultant's on board and is interviewing staff. And of course, we're also interested in what other agencies are doing as well, as we kind of try and come up with SLIP 2.0. Like, where do we go from here? And how do we continue to help our customers maintain their private laterals? Adaptive reuse projects. So month ago, 2 months ago, we were at council. There was a healthy conversation when our item came up concerning waiving metering requirements for 100% adaptive reuse for low income. Yes, and anyway, there's a healthy conversation about how to help all adaptive reuses, even for profit adaptive reuse projects. And so we've been asked, along with community development, to come back to council. And so we've been working on that. We've met with the developers and architects who are working on some of these adaptive reuse projects, getting their feedback. And our hope is to next month bring back some options for the Water Commission to consider. And we're trying to stay in step with community development, and then after hearing your feedback, kind of bring back a final option that we can take to Planning Commission. I think City Council was really interested in Water Commission stretching. I know that there's an interest in metering every customer, but trying to find a compromise that will support adaptive reuse. Staff and I think we found something that could work. Mainly around private submetering, which we've already kind of accepted as a reality with some projects. And it seems like right now, how it's set up is that the developer first has to see if they can fit meters in there in the public right of way. What we're thinking right now is that for adaptive reuse projects, we would just straight off allow private submetering. For all intents and purposes, many of these projects don't have the frontage anyway, so it's kind of defunctory process to go through, but it is one of those, a risk for a developer not knowing what they're going to need to do with that. So we could potentially reduce that risk by saying for adaptive reuse projects in the downtown, we could just allow private submetering. So we're working on that. That's kind of where we're thinking could be a compromise. Still getting that metering. One of the things that we want to find out, there's got to be less than a dozen projects have come through that have been using the private submetering. How's that working? And so our staff are going to be following up with the developers, the owners, and hopefully, if we can talk to some of the tenants about how they think it's working. Because at the end of the day, they're supposed to be passing on messages that we send them in our water bill. That's supposed to be happening. How are they being communicated with on their water usage? And so hopefully when we come back to you, we'll have some more information on how that relationship is working.
And in that process, are you also collecting information about existing or current vendors? Like who's actually providing the private submetering technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we looked into it, this is probably a while back, we did find that there were several vendors popping up in this space where they would basically take care, they would do the meter reading electronically, and they would do the billing, and they would do all this stuff. So yeah, that's a great question to see how that market's doing, see if there's still a number of companies doing it, which would tell you that it's a healthy space, right? So that's a great follow-up question we can ask.
And in the interviews with folks that already have the submetering, like what is it working basically?
Right.
You know, are they happy with the vendor that they chose?
Right. That's a great question. The other one I wanted to touch on was water and wastewater revenues are actually looking good. I can't explain it because water usage is really low.
Yeah.
But revenues are coming in. We're coming in like right where we thought. And again, sometimes I think it's just luck, but we do spend a lot of time modeling it. And yeah, right now we're projected to hit the end of year right where we thought we would. And at the same time, water usage remains historically pretty low, as you can see in some of the data that we presented here in the report.
It's
So-
interesting because it's not a super wet or a super dry.
Right.
You know?
Right. I don't know if it's the storms that have been nicely spaced so
Yeah.
that no one needs to turn their irrigation on. Permanent changes to behavior.
It's all the AMI.
AMI has to be playing a part. I mean, I see how many alerts we're sending out to customers. It's remarkable. So that is clearly helping.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a good story there. And then we had our workshop. We call it a workshop with fire. It was a joint session with fire and water to talk to the community. I think it went really well. We had our FAQs up. Didn't get any questions that I can't say we weren't expecting. But I think it was, council liaison Sneddon was there.
I was going to add that in my comments later, that I think it was very successful, and people are so focused on fire issues, and really bringing in the water component and balancing that out was a great idea, very proactive, and I think it was really well received. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I think it helped that it rained that day, so it was important. It was important,
down.
but it took the temperature of the room down. Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah. So with that, happy to field any other questions you might have.
Questions? Okay. Any public comment?
Chair Snyder, we have no speakers for public comment on this item.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.